Trump went to war with Iran, then immediately lifted sanctions on its oil to prevent his own economic collapse in the U.S. Is that not just like the biggest indication of all that this is a total failure? He goes to war with them, and then he has to lift sanctions that have been in place for on and off for decades to avoid his own economic collapse. We're losing. Wake up. Wake up, Goyam. You're losing. Trump has said now that he has defeated Iran, total victory. You know, total victory with the exception of like their entire missile base, all their underground missile cities, their launchers, their air defense systems, their capability to shut down the Strait of Hormuz, their allies' capability like the Iraqi resistance, Lebanese resistance, and Yemeni resistance to make very big problems for everyone in the region. You know, other than that stuff, they've totally defeated Iran. Other than replacing Khamenei with Khamenei as the supreme leader, other than replacing Ali Larijani with the hardest of all hardliners, Saeed Jalili, you know, total victory, total defeat, right? Iran is totally defeated. Other than that stuff, right? But, you know, I will say I find it a little bit weird that Trump has come out so many times and said that he has total victory over the Iranians, given the fact that we're now witnessing this very odd development. The Trump administration has issued a general license allowing the export and sale of Iranian crude oil loaded on ships starting from March 20th, 2026. What is that? What is that? Wait. We're in a war with Iran and we're lifting the sanctions on their oil exports? What is going on here? What is going on here? I have no idea. No idea whatsoever. But yeah, I do find this a bit odd. The license is valid until April 19th, 2026. U.S. Treasury Secretary Bessent stated that this temporary exemption will allow the rapid injection of approximately 140 million barrels of oil into the global market, which is supposed to contribute to price stability. Trump's situation is embarrassing. He is making unprecedented sacrifices for each and every barrel of oil. Imagine. Trump went to war with Iran, then immediately lifted sanctions on its oil to prevent his own economic collapse in the U.S. Is that not just like the biggest indication of all that this is a total failure? He goes to war with them, and then he has to lift sanctions that have been in place for on and off for decades to avoid his own economic collapse. We're losing. Wake up. Wake up, Goyam. You're losing. Trump will also allow Iran to access nearly $14 billion in oil revenue and ease sanctions on Iranian oil to confront rising oil prices. Massive concession by the United States to Iran. It's the first time the U.S. has bought Iranian oil since 1996. Now, we have the golden opportunity to listen to the man who made this all happen, U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, give his squirming, fish flopping, fish out of water flopping around 5D chess explanation as to, you know, how this is actually a good thing. And this indicates that the U.S. is victorious. Take a listen.
Talk about your announcement this past week. On Friday, the Treasury Department lifted sanctions on Iranian oil stored on tankers, a move that would effectively allow Iran to get more than $14 billion of oil revenue. So why is the U.S. helping to fund a country that it's currently at war with, Mr. Secretary?
Again, Kristen, why don't we have good facts here? That Iranian oil was always going to be sold to the Chinese. It was going to be sold at a discount. So which is better, Kristen? Which is better if oil prices spike?
Well, it's so stupid he can't even get through one sentence. All he had to do was go out there and get through one sentence. He can't even get through one. Can't even get through one sentence. Maybe if he had like a note card, maybe if he had one of the things that you read off of. But no.
Which is better if oil prices spiked to $150 and they were getting 70% of that, or oil prices below 100? It's better to have them where they are now. And to be clear,
I'm going to just very briefly explain to you why this is extremely stupid. He's saying, what's better? even just listen to what he said. It doesn't make sense. He said, what's better? They're going to sell discounted oil because it's sanctioned, discounted oil, but prices are high, or prices are going to go down a little bit and they're going to be selling unsanctioned oil. Okay, but if they're selling unsanctioned oil, even if prices go down a little bit, what does that mean? It means that whatever discounts are in place, assuming these are not like long-term contracts that are already pre-made with the Chinese, which in all likelihood they probably are. This probably has like zero impact on anything. But assuming that the dropping of sanctions by way of, the insurance or which ships are picking this up, this doesn't even make sense, because if they're already loaded onto ships, that means they're already on the shadow fleet vessels, which means dropping sanctions doesn't impact anything because these are already shadow fleet vessels used for sanctioned oil. So none of this even makes sense. It's literally just optics signaling to the oil and gas companies, signaling to the stock traders for Brent crude, trying to signal to them. But the fact of the matter is, it doesn't actually hurt Iran, because if you drop the sanctions, what that would hypothetically mean is that Iran then gets to sell their oil at a higher price. You understand? If it's sanctioned, they have to sell at a lower price.
We had always planned for this contingency. About 140 million barrels are out on the water. In essence, we are jujitsuing the Iranians. We are using their own oil against them. We have a much better line of sight, to be clear, at Treasury, when this oil goes to, if it goes to Indonesia, if it goes to Japan, if it goes to Korea, we have a much better line of sight and are able to block accounts that the oil goes into. When it goes into China, it completely gets recycled. So to be clear, that 14 billion number is grossly overstated.
Given that Iran has been shipping their oil for years and years and years, and they've somehow done it without the U.S. Blocking the account so they can't do it anymore, methinks that they're going to continue doing this, and the U.S. isn't going to be able to do a damn thing about it. I don't know. We're jujitsuing them. It's all a 5D chess move, Karen. We're 5D. We're 5 steps ahead of them. Five steps in a hip and a skip and a pop ahead of them, the Iranians. Just understand that, like, lifting sanctions on oil that is already on the sea, it literally has no impact whatsoever on the price, right? What this has an impact on is it is a virtue signal to the markets to try and get the markets to drop oil prices, right? But what we've seen throughout this entire conflict is nothing but that, right? In the opening weeks of this war, Trump said, Strait of Hormuz is open. Everything's fine. Just sail through. Every time he said that, what happened to Brent crude? Brent crude price per barrel went down. Oh, well, the Strait of Hormuz is open now. Trump tweeted it on Truth Social. So Brent, it goes down. Crude oil prices go down. And then what happened? The Iranians would see that. And then right before the markets open or close, they'd say, we're going to bomb an oil tanker sitting a little bit too close to the Strait of Hormuz, and oil prices go right back up for the week. So it's this tit for tat game. On the U.S. side, they just have to tweet something. They just have to say something, no matter how ridiculous it is. On the Iranian side, they just have to once again prove that the Strait of Hormuz is closed to unfriendly nations for the oil prices to go back up. And we did see that, because moments after we had this news that the U.S. was going to be lifting sanctions on Iranian oil that was already at sea until April 19th, the Iranian parliament speaker, Ghalibaf, said, well, thanks for lifting the sanctions on our oil, but we're actually all sold out of the oil. We have no oil. Sorry. Obviously, equally as ludicrous and fake and silly, but this is their way of saying, like, yeah, that's not going to help out your market. And then you have like these you know, these like 17-year-old crypto day traders that are reading these statements, and they actually think that he means that like Iran is somehow sold out of oil, or their oil facilities have been targeted and hit and they're now unusable. And they, oh God, well, oil prices are going to go up now. He said they're out of oil. They're out of oil. Iran's out of oil. You understand? This is all a big game. It's all theatrics. It's all meant to target the stock price of oil and gas. But the truth of the matter is, Iran is the only country that has a pressure point on Brent crude oil prices. They are the ones that have this in a chokehold. It's not the United States of America. Trump says that, at a certain point, the Strait of Hormuz will open. Take a listen.
Yeah, but what did you mean by that? It's a simple military maneuver. It's relatively safe, but you need a lot of help in the sense of you need ships, you need volume. And NATO could help us, but they so far haven't had the courage to do so. And others could help us, but, you know, we don't use it. You know, at a certain point, it'll open itself at a certain point. But we've defeated the enemy, and they are an enemy. They're a sick group of people.
At a certain point, it'll open itself, he says. And yeah, this Twitter post has it right. Trump is correct. The difference is that when the Strait of Hormuz does open, the U.S. and the U.S.'s allies will not be the ones who control it. And nobody is going to use potentially the dollar there any longer for purchasing oil. In fact, Iran has already said that, you know, in certain circumstances, we may allow for oil, like the Pakistani oil tanker, to pass through if their oil is sold in petro yuan instead of petrodollar. There are also reports that Iran and Japan are close to an agreement on the Strait of Hormuz transit that will ensure profits for Iran. Iran has begun negotiating individually with each country regarding escorts through, like Iranian escorts through the Strait of Hormuz, and will likely charge a hefty fee. If Iran starts charging around 10% per tanker, according to some reports, the country will collect $800 billion annually. So we didn't have to do this. We didn't have to do any of this. Now we're lifting sanctions on Iranian oil, and one can only assume that oil, yes, will pass through the Strait of Hormuz in a very, very particular manner, under very close scrutiny, and they're going to have to pay a lot of money to Iran to make this happen. Iran is basically just funding the entire war at this point. They could, hypothetically, by doing this. Now, also, we've seen that the U.S. has announced that they'll be temporarily lifting sanctions on Russian oil, another country we are de facto at war with. So how are things going for Trump? We're going to have a peace deal in Ukraine in 24 hours. We're still fighting the war and still providing, you know, targeting and logistics, in some cases, direct aid and military support for the Ukrainians. And now we've had to lift sanctions on Russian oil. Iran, Trump said, I'm the peace guy. I'm the peace candidate. Now we're at a war. We're losing on all accounts. We got forced out of our bases. And now we're talking about Strait of Hormuz being in the effective control of the Iranians for now until the foreseeable future. And they're going to make a lot of money off of it. At the same time, in the immediate, to avoid the collapse of the U.S. government, we are now lifting the sanctions on oil of the country that we started this war with. Not going well. Before you leave, I want to say thank you for the support, because after 2 years of being banned, we are finally back home on YouTube. So be sure to subscribe to our channel and also join as a member on our channel using the link at the top of the description. I rely on the generous support of viewers like yourself to get the truth out to as many people as possible. You can also support the show on Locals or GiveSendGo. The mainstream media and the powers that be are never going to stop attacking us for bringing the truth to as many people as we do. Thank you so much for your support.